Discover 4 amazing yogurts that transform arthritis pain into muscle strength after 60 exposed. Alice Thompson stood at the entrance of the health fair, bright sunlight pouring down as she squinted at the colorful banners flapping in the gentle breeze. What's the worst that could happen? She muttered to herself, fighting against the crippling stiffness in her joints. The laughter of children playing nearby tugged at her heart, reminding her of the pancake mornings and vibrant garden days. Today was supposed to be a day of new beginnings, but as she stepped forward, her feet hesitated, uncertainty creeping like ice into her veins. The noise of the fair enveloped her, laughter mingling with the soft hum of conversation, a chosen escape from her everyday battles. Alice thought about the pain creeping into her joints each morning and how it snuffed out her playful spirit. Should she even be here? What if this was just another fleeting hope? Yet, in the depths of her heart, she longed to break free from the gripping shadows of arthritis. Then, a bright-eyed nutritionist named Sarah approached her with excitement. Discover these amazing probiotic yogurts. The words slid into Alice's ears like honey. She felt a flicker of something, perhaps hope? Losing herself in the vibrant descriptions of specific flavors, she felt tiny hints of joy blossom as Sarah detailed how these yogurts were designed to combat her discomfort. What if this was the key? Before Alice could fully process it, she found herself nodding eagerly, buying a tub of yogurt almost on impulse, latching onto the hope that had felt so transient for far too long. The week passed rapidly, and Alice gathered with Marge as they always did over coffee. "You won't believe this," she exclaimed, excitement spilling forth. "I've started eating these helpful yogurts, and I think they might be working." Yet, just as she felt her spirits rise, a shadow loomed over her. Her son Mark had lost his job. With a young family depending on him, her heart ached for his stress. Could she put her energy into herself when he needed her to? The tug-of-war inside her tore at her, weakening the cheer she found in newfound hobbies like yoga and dance parties. Pressures tightened around her heart. Should she focus on her well-being and embrace these unsuspecting joys in life? Or should she abandon her journey for the sake of her son? No matter how often she convinced herself that her healing journey could inspire him as well, guilt squashed those fleeting thoughts. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Alice could barely take a breath amid the swirling chaos of her thoughts. The energy she felt from those delicious yogurts, the dance parties, even the silly yoga poses in her backyard, all lingered in the air, counterbalancing the tension of Mark's struggle. But every laugh shared with neighbors felt like a betrayal against his burden. What if pursuing her joy left him with more pain and struggle? The deeper she delved into her new choices, the more guilt wrapped itself around her spirit. Torn between two paths, one vibrant and hopeful, the other a dark burden of family loyalty, Alice felt the pressure closing in. Just as the disarray reached its peak, a knock on the door shattered her fragile equilibrium. A newspaper editor reached out for a story on her transformation. "Would you like to shine a light on your journey?" the editor asked, and for a moment, Alice glimpsed a chance to share her story. But the moment was fleeting, overshadowed by the ache in her heart for her son. As anticipation collided with uncertainty, Alice found herself on the precipice of a decision that would either set her free or bind her even more tightly to the weight of family obligations. And that crossroads left her breathless with anguish, longing, and a fragile hope that flickered like a candle in the dark. The following morning, Alice stood in her kitchen, hesitant as she stared at the vibrant yogurt tub sitting on the counter like a beacon of hope. The sun cast a warm glow through the window, illuminating the colors of the labels, showcasing the promises of health and vitality. It was a stark contrast to the cold knot of anxiety tightening in her chest as she battled the swirl of thoughts regarding her son Dean's recent job loss. She opened the tub, scooped out a generous serving, and took a bite. The creamy texture and tantalizing flavors enveloped her senses, stirring the tiny fragments of joy she had begun to reclaim. In that moment, a spark of resolve ignited within her. This was more than just yogurt. It was a commitment to herself, an act of self-love that had become a foreign concept in her life. Yet doubt quickly creeped back in. Could she truly allow herself these small moments of pleasure while Mark struggled? With every spoonful, the weight of maternal instinct weighed heavily on her conscience. She had spent much of her life fostering and nurturing her family, often at the expense of her own desires. The guilt hovered like a shadow, yet another clash between personal fulfillment and familial duty. Later that day, while scrolling through her phone, Alice saw countless posts celebrating personal victories, stories of individuals overcoming pain, uncertainty, and feeling empowered after taking control of their health. She marveled at the sheer audacity of others to pursue their dreams fearlessly. But the stark contrast of her own internal struggle gnawed at her. She felt small in a world that seemed vibrant and alive with possibility, while she was ensnared in an endless cycle of worry. The editor's inquiry swirled in her thoughts. If she could share her story, might it not only bring her some recognition, but also help others who were in similar situations? In that moment of reflection, Alice experienced a small but profound revelation. Her journey mattered. A sense of purpose began to replace her feelings of guilt. Perhaps Mark could learn from her experience, seeing that personal growth doesn't diminish family loyalty. Instead, it can serve as a source of inspiration. The following day, she decided to seize that opportunity. She put together snippets of her journey, her struggles with arthritis, her recent discoveries in nutrition, her joy in rediscovering movement, and dedicated an afternoon to writing. The act transformed the painful emotions swirling inside her into words, a cathartic release that flowed from her as though it had been bottled up for years. The first draft was a mess of raw emotions and wandering thoughts, but the pursuit of expression felt liberating. In those moments of creation, Alice began to see herself through a different lens, not as just a mother or daughter, but as an individual with her own unfolding narrative and potential. It was her light illuminating paths forward, nurturing not only her journey, but perhaps her family's as well. Back in the kitchen, as she savored another bite of yogurt, the melody of resilience played softly in her heart. What if Mark saw her pursuing joy and strength? What if he could find inspiration in her journey rather than guilt? As she pondered the implications of her choices, the doorbell rang again. Her heart raced. Was it Mark, coming to share his burdens once more? Or perhaps it was news related to her story. With a mixture of anticipation and curiosity, Alice moved toward the door. The moment had arrived where uncertainty would collide with potential. With a trembling hand, she reached for the handle, bracing herself for whatever lay beyond. Would this be another test of her resolve, or a chance to embrace her own life fully? Her breath caught in her throat, as the world outside held both opportunity and fear. Alice paused for a split second, her fingers hovering above the doorknob. The world outside flickered in her mind, an unpredictable panorama of possibilities. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself, mentally rolling through affirmations she wished she could adopt more readily. Courage, strength, potential. She twisted the handle and opened the door. Standing before her was a tall woman with striking red hair, holding a clipboard and radiating an air of professionalism mixed with approachability. "Hi, I'm Jennifer from the local wellness magazine. I received your submission and wanted to discuss your story further." Alice's heart raced, a flurry of excitement mixed with apprehension. "My story? You mean, you're interested?" Jennifer nodded enthusiastically, stepping inside as Alice stepped back. The sunlight caught the woman's hair, framing her excited expression. "Absolutely. Your journey has resonated with us. As I was reading through your drafts, I could see the potential for something really impactful." Alice's mind spiraled with a blend of disbelief and elation. It was an opportunity she hadn't anticipated. Perhaps sharing her story could extend beyond merely grasping her own fulfillment. It could motivate others to embrace life despite adversity. But as she led Jennifer to the living room, she felt the weight of her familial responsibilities clawing back at her consciousness, a reminder of Mark's struggles looming in the background. "Maybe we can start with what prompted you to begin writing?" Jennifer suggested, her pen poised above her notepad. Alice looked down at her hands, suddenly self-conscious. "Well, I've been battling arthritis for years, and my recent journey toward healthier living has been complicated. My son Dean lost his job, and and I felt compelled to explore how my struggles can turn into something positive not just for me, but for him too. Jennifer's eyes sparkled with interest, and Alice could feel the journalist in her urging for more details. That is powerful. It sounds like you're working on redefining your identity. How has that shaped your views on motherhood? The question caught Alice off guard, sending her into a whirlpool of reflection. She felt the familiar tug of guilt battling her newfound vision. Was seeking something for herself selfish when those she loved were struggling? I've always placed my family's needs first. I had been surrendered to that role for so many years that the thought of pursuing my own joy felt indulgent. She hesitated, biting her lip as she gathered any hesitation into resolve. But I see now that my growth could inspire my family to also seek their own. Maybe it doesn't mean abandoning them. Maybe it means leading by example. Jennifer nodded, and Alice noticed how her demeanor began to shift. It buzzed with excitement, like a coiled spring waiting to release. She was struck by her own words. The act of sharing was becoming a mirror, revealing hidden aspects of her desires. Each term forged a bridge between the life she had lived and the one she yearned for. Would it be all right if I asked you some questions about your journey? I think we should focus on the deeper motivations that drove you to this path, Jennifer encouraged, her eyes locked onto Alice's, as if she were electrified by the potential before them. Alice felt a soft swell of confidence pushing through her insecurities. Perhaps she was ready to reveal more than just her pain. It was time to explore her strength. She felt the walls begin to crumble, allowing hope and ambition to seep in where self-doubt lived. Sure, feel free to ask anything. As the conversation progressed, Alice found herself discussing her perception of self-worth, revelations she uncovered during her journey, and the unexpected joy found in even the smallest victories. It was exhilarating and terrifying, confronting the specter of past insecurities while unveiling a newly shaped identity. Yet, as she spoke, a thought nagged at her. Was Mark even ready to see this shift in her? Deep down, she yearned for him to witness her evolution, too. Understand that it could uplift him too. How could she communicate that beyond the thresholds of her own self-discovery? Jennifer's next question brought Alice crashing back to reality, her heart racing once again. Do you believe that your story has the potential to bridge the gap between your growth and your family's struggles? Could it change the way they see their own journeys? The question hung in the air, charged with implications. Would her journey indeed reach out and inspire them, or would it expose rifts too deep to mend? As fear and determination swirled within her, Alice could feel the stakes rising dramatically. The moment had come for more than just personal revelation. It was time to consider the dynamics of her family, what might be lost, and what could be gained in her pursuit of a life filled with purpose. Would she find the strength to confront the potential backlash from her family's expectations, or would she allow fear to constrain her just as it had in the past? The answer loomed like a shadow, encasing her budding resolve in equal parts courage and trepidation. With Jennifer leaning in, waiting for her response, the air around them thickened with possibility. Alice's determination pulsed through her veins. The answer was teetering on the edge of revelation, both daunting and exhilarating. What awaited her on the other side of vulnerability? Alice's mind raced, caught in a dichotomy of aspirations and fears. She had spent much of her life dancing around her own ambitions, brushing aside her needs for the sake of nurturing her family. Now, as she faced Jennifer's hopeful gaze, she felt the familiar weight of obligation push back against her newfound resolve. Yes, she finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. I believe my story could show them another path. But what if they see me trying to change things as a threat? What if their struggles pull them away rather than inspire them? The words hung heavily in the air, her stomach twisting at the possibilities they presented. Jennifer offered a reassuring smile. Change is scary, especially for those we love. But your story comes from a place of resilience. It can serve as a beacon, guiding them to confront their own challenges. Alice considered this, her heart echoing with doubt. Reflecting on the dynamic between Mark and her, she struggled to envision a scenario where her transformation could empower him rather than intimidate. Mark has always been so focused on his own battles. I worry he wouldn't see my growth as anything but a reminder of what he feels defeated against. But have you shared your intentions with him? Perhaps opening up this dialogue might change things, Jennifer suggested, her tone encouraging. Not really. I've been so consumed with figuring it all out myself, Alice admitted, feeling the weight of her past decisions falling on her shoulders. It was time to confront the fear, to articulate the yearnings she had long suppressed. Then that becomes part of your journey. Sometimes, it takes more than one person to shift the view of a family. You could be the catalyst, Alice. Leadership is often rooted in transparency and vulnerability, Jennifer encouraged, jotting down notes as she spoke. Alice nodded slowly, her thoughts meshing with the unfolding narrative of her life. The more she allowed herself to visualize this transformation, the clearer it became. She imagined sitting down with Mark, sharing her goals not as a detachment from him, but rather as a bridge towards a shared future. She wanted to tell him that her journey was not just about her. It was a path they could traverse together, discovering resilience and healing side by side. "What about your writing?" Jennifer asked, pulling Alice back into the present moment. "How do you envision getting your message out there?" It was a moment of clarity, one that sparked with potential. "I think I want to create a series that addresses not just my struggles, but solutions. I want to focus on practical advice that others can adopt. Stories of triumph, of those who have navigated through pain and found strength in healing. Maybe together, we can confront rather than hide from the challenges," she replied, excitement coursing through her. Jennifer's interest flared. "That's brilliant. Your personal experiences lend authenticity, and empowering others can pave the way for your family to realize their worth too. You have to start somewhere." Alice felt the doors of possibility swinging open. Her writing could become a reflection of who she aspired to be, a beacon encouraging others to break free from their own limitations. It was a moment of realization. The act of writing wouldn't only capture her story, but could help reshape the narratives of those around her. Still, a quiet fear simmered beneath her enthusiasm. What if she failed to communicate this to Mark effectively? What if he felt pushed away instead of invited into her world of healing? The thought made her chest tighten, a reminder that the road was fraught with complexity. As Jennifer prepared to wrap up, Alice's mind buzzed with questions and ideas ignited by their conversation. She was standing at a precipice, her story ready to be unveiled to a world that might not yet understand her. But how would she navigate the emotional terrain ahead with Mark? Would she have the courage to lead this charge? She looked at Jennifer, the reflection of a path she hadn't dared to consider. "I need to discuss this with Mark first, find a way to bring him into this without overwhelming him." "Sounds like a good place to start," Jennifer replied, her notes still in her hands. "Let us plan for our next discussion to revolve around those themes. It could deepen the impact of what you want to achieve." The conversation had left Alice invigorated, yet a gnawing uncertainty remained. Would her intention to involve Mark amplify or obstruct her journey of self-discovery? That pivotal conversation awaited her, a twist in the narrative echoing within the confines of her heart. And as she prepared to step back into the world, she was gripped by a resounding truth. Her evolution was not merely about personal satisfaction. It demanded courage and shared vulnerability. How could she transform her outreach without losing the foundation of her family? The time was near to confront the invisible lines drawn by pain and expectation. The question hung in her mind like a challenge. Would she have the courage to invite Mark into her world of healing, or would fear once again dictate her choices? The sun filtered through the kitchen window as Alice prepared breakfast, illuminating the space with a warm glow. But this light felt different. It provided no comfort, only a stark reminder of the conversation with Jennifer. Her heart raced as she poured milk over a bowl of cereal, her mind swimming with possible outcomes of confronting Mark. As she set the table, she stole a glance at the photograph pinned to the refrigerator. Mark, smiling beside her on a hiking trail, carefree in a moment that felt worlds away now. Would he even recognize the woman who stood here, contemplating her ambitions for the first time? Doubts gnawed at the edges of her resolve, whispering that change might not be welcomed. After finishing her preparations, she called out, "Breakfast is ready." The sound echoed softly through their home. A moment later, Mark shuffled in, his eyes bleary but focused on the table. The tension between them felt tangible, charged with unspoken worries and unacknowledged fears. "Smells good," he mumbled, settling into his seat. "Thanks," she replied, forcing a smile as she poured him a cup of coffee. "How did you sleep?" "Fine," he said, his tone clipped. Alice sensed the weight of unsaid words lingering between them. This was her moment to bridge the gap between her resurgence and his retreat. But as she opened her mouth to speak, the words slipped away like sand through her fingers. Instead, they fell into the rhythm of ordinary banter about their plans for the day. Alice participated, careful not to disrupt the fragile peace that, while suffocating, was less frightening than the truth she wanted to express. But as they cleared the dishes, an anxious urgency welled inside her. A small voice inside her head insisted this was the time to share, to carve out a new reality for both of them. "Mark, can we talk?" she ventured, her heart pounding against her ribs. He paused, the defensiveness in his posture easily read. "About what?" "About us, what I've been feeling, and my writing projects." She took a slow breath, gauging his reaction. A flicker of interest crossed his features, but before it could bloom, doubt clouded his expression. "I'm not really in the headspace for that right now. You know how busy work has been," he replied, his tone edged with weariness. "I get that," she said, battling the urge to retreat, but feeling the draw of her ambitions. "But this is about more than just my projects. It's about our family, what we can build together." Mark's eyes shifted, an uncharacteristic vulnerability softening his stance. "What do you mean?" With that small concession, she pressed on. "I've been thinking a lot about my journey, how I want to share our stories of resilience, without glossing over our struggles. I think we need to confront these issues together." Her voice trembled slightly, revealing her anxiety that a silence hung thick in the air. Would her desire to share illuminate a path forward, or amplify the shadows already lurking? Mark looked into her eyes, searching. "You've always been better at these things," he said eventually. "I don't want to hold you back, but I also don't know if I can keep up with all of this." "It's not about keeping up," she countered gently. "It's about walking alongside each other. I want you to be part of this transformation. It's not just my healing, it can be ours." He glanced down at his coffee, staring into its depths as if seeking answers in the dark liquid. It was a reaction that both encouraged and frightened her. Could he see it? Could he envision a new reality for them both? "I don't know, Alice." His voice was a whisper, fragile and conflicted. They stood there, two people tethered by love, yet pulled apart by fear. The fear that had defined their interactions for far too long loomed heavily. It demanded they either evolve or retreat. Alice clenched her fists, drawing strength from her determination. This was just the beginning, the moment that would either ignite or extinguish hope. "I believe in us, Mark. I hope you can too." As Mark met her gaze again, a spark of awareness moved through him. The barriers were shifting, but what lay on the other side was still uncertain. Stepping into that uncertainty would take more than words, it would demand action and faith. With a shared glance that spoke of potential and apprehension, Alice felt the pull of their impending reality. Would they grasp this opportunity for collective healing, or would they remain trapped in familiar shadows? And there, nestled in the heart of their home, the true challenge stood before them. Would they dare to step into a new chapter together, or would fear weave them further apart? Alice stood at the window, tracing invisible lines across the condensation with her finger. The world outside buzzed with life, a stark contrast to the stillness enveloping her home. What if today was the day she truly stepped into her ambitions? The meeting with Mark had ignited a flicker of hope, yet the fear of rejection loomed large, threatening to snuff it out. Breathing deeply, she turned away from the view, redirecting her focus. She had a deadline to meet for the local magazine, and while the topic of community initiatives felt distant, it was still a thread connecting her to her passion. Taking a seat at her desk, she opened her laptop, allowing the noise of the keys to drown out the uncertainties that echoed in her mind. As the words flowed onto the page, an unexpected surge of inspiration gripped her. She began to infuse pieces of her personal narrative into the article, weaving her experiences about resilience into discussions of local success stories. The exhilaration of creation pulled her out of her despair. With every keystroke, she felt less like a woman confined to her domestic responsibilities and more like a storyteller reclaiming her voice. But just as quickly as that fervor surged, doubt encroached. "Is this self-indulgent?" she asked herself, typing furiously yet hesitating to publish. She scrolled back, rereading her words. The narratives of those who had overcome adversity felt too personal, too raw. What if Mark read it and felt exposed? What if her attempts to push forward would be seen as selfish? Alice sighed, heart heavy with conflicting desires. Pursuing her art meant risking vulnerability, and perhaps that was the crux of her dilemma. She needed more than just acceptance. She needed a partner who could embrace the full spectrum of her ambitions not merely as a spectator, but as an active participant in their shared life narrative. With newfound resolve, she pledged to confront the boundaries that held her captive. Alice knew that the discussion with Mark couldn't end with a frail agreement. It demanded action, and she would find the way to turn those words into tangible strides toward mutual understanding. That afternoon, with the article polished and a sense of clarity settling in, she called Jennifer. "I need your help," she declared as soon as her friend answered. Jennifer's excitement bubbled through the phone, infusing Alice with encouragement. They brainstormed ideas, each suggestion grounding Alice deeper in her aspirations: a workshop for writers, a community gathering to share stories of resilience, a collaborative space for creativity. "This could be a launchpad for everything you've been reflecting on," Jennifer chimed. "People want to connect not only through pain, but through hope and triumph." Alice hung up, her heart racing at the possibility. If she could galvanize that connection in her community, perhaps Mark could be drawn into it to see the healing potential in sharing narratives. The thought of engaging others in their struggles filled her with purpose. With this determination, Alice stepped into the living room where Mark was sprawled on the couch, eyes glued to the television. The time had come to act, to share her ideas. "Mark," she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach, "I want to talk about creating something meaningful together about our stories." He turned, brow furrowed, an interest flickering as he muted the television. This was the moment she had prepared for. They could either build a bridge together or stumble through the uncertainties of silence. The air between them crackled as Alice took a breath, readying herself to paint a vision of connection, not just for their relationship, but for a community hungry for healing. Would he be willing to share not just their burdens, but also their hopes? As she launched into her thoughts, marking the beginning of a conversation she could no longer afford to put off, the stakes suddenly felt higher than ever, not just for her ambitions, but for the life they wanted to cultivate together. This was just the start, and it was an opening that could either fortify or fracture everything they had built. Would vulnerability foster connection, or would it expose the cracks that still lay beneath the surface? As Alice leaned into her conversation, her heart raced, drawing upon every ounce of courage she could muster. Mark listened, yet doubt flickered in his eyes, mirroring her own uncertainties. She described the initiative she envisioned, a series of workshops encouraging local voices to share their stories of perseverance. What if, she thought, sharing their personal struggles could foster empathy and understanding in their community? Her voice grew stronger as she articulated each point, but she noticed the growing tension in Mark's posture. He leaned back, arms crossed, an instinctual barrier she sensed might be difficult to breach. "Alice, I just don't see how talking about it helps anyone," he said cautiously, his gaze casting downward. The familiar nagging doubt crept back in. Was this all just some ethereal notion she had conjured, a glamorized escape from her domestic reality? But it could bring people together, she pressed, desperate for him to resonate with her passion. "Maybe," Mark replied, his tone measured, "but people talk about their problems all the time. Does it really change anything?" The cold sting of disappointment welled up inside her. Yet beneath that surface-level frustration lay a pivotal realization, a turning point. Mark's skepticism didn't mean her ambitions were misguided. Perhaps they were simply untangling a deeper conversation. "Aren't we sick of pretending everything is perfect?" she countered, voice more assertive now. "Stories of resilience are powerful. They embody humanity. They can light a path forward." Alice felt the surge of emotion pulling at her chest, the melding of fear and resolve. Each word became a thread weaving her conviction into the fabric of their relationship. Challenging Mark to confront his own discomfort with vulnerability, he met her gaze, his brow furrowing deeper. "What do you want from me?" The question hung heavy, laden with meaning. "I want us to create something. To make a difference together," she replied, her voice steady. "I need you, not as a bystander, but as my partner. This isn't just about the workshops. It's about our narrative, a shared journey." Conflict threaded through his features, but in his downcast eyes, Alice spotted the flicker of consideration. The walls he held up seemed to tremble. Mark shifted, a hint of curiosity surfacing. "You really think this could help people?" he asked, vulnerability seeping into his tone. "I believe it can," she affirmed, her conviction unwavering. "It starts with the courage to share and to listen. We find strength in honesty." The movement of her words prompted a palpable shift. Though he remained skeptical, Mark's walls began to crack, revealing a willingness to engage. Perhaps he wasn't ready to leap entirely into her vision, yet his questioning offered a glimmer of hope. Just as they began to navigate the dense waters of their conversation, Alice felt her phone vibrate on the table, snapping her focus for a moment. Instinctively, she glanced down at the notification. It was Jennifer, excitedly suggesting a potential venue for the workshops, a local community center that had recently opened its doors. "Mark," she said, diverting back to his gaze, "this isn't just about our past. It's about who we can become together. Let us explore this opportunity. Let us see how many lives we can touch." Mark opened his mouth, likely ready to argue or maybe even shut her down again. But before he could speak, Alice pressed on, not willing to let the moment slip away. "What if we combine your skills with mine? You're such a talented negotiator, and if we could invite people into these discussions, it could transform the connections we build." At her suggestion, Mark's contemplative expression deepened. Maybe he hadn't realized the potential for his skills and her initiative. Maybe there lay the seed of collaboration they needed. Yet, as the conversation hovered in the air, Alice couldn't shake the feeling that a larger decision loomed ahead. Would he choose to step into the uncertainty alongside her, or would he take a step back into familiar shadows? Denying both their growth, the door to vulnerability creaked open, inviting them into uncharted territory. Alice felt exhilarated yet terrified, knowing she had planted the seeds of change. As Mark contemplated her proposal in silence, she could sense the choice awaiting him not just for their relationship, but for the potential future she dared to envision. As they locked eyes, both aware of the monumental decision ahead, Alice wondered if they were truly prepared to embrace the vulnerability required for transformation. What new truths lay beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? Alice's heart thudded in her chest as she held Mark's gaze, a magnetic tension tightening between them. She sensed that this moment could reshape not only their individual destinies, but also the dynamic of their entire relationship. Just as the silence began to thicken, Mark finally shifted his gaze. It was not dismissive or cold. Instead, it revealed layers of contemplation. "I don't know, Alice," he finally admitted, his brow furrowing. "What if we dive into this, and it doesn't work? What if we open old wounds?" His words stirred a tempest of emotions within her. His apprehension mirrored her own fears about venturing into unknown territory. Yet, these small, disquieting thoughts had been her constant companions, shadows tethered to her aspirations for a more meaningful life. How could she help him understand the transformative power of storytelling without exposing herself fully to the same doubts? "Mark," Alice began, her voice steady and resolute, "I've walked this path of silence far too long. Trust me, the fear of failure pales in comparison to the fear of inaction. What is more painful, the risk of mimicking past failures, or the regret of not trying?" She felt a flicker of determination ignite, pushing her forward. "We have the chance to confront our demons. These stories, their power lies in authenticity. Maybe through them, we'll understand each other and ourselves better." Mark's expression shifted, contemplation weaving into his skepticism. "But if we start talking about struggles, what if the past consumes us? It's not pretty." Alice felt a flutter of frustration but tempered it with genuine concern. "That's the point. It's messy, it's difficult, but it's also healing. We don't have to have all the answers. We can learn from each other's histories. It could push us both. You might even discover something you never knew about yourself." Her heart raced again, not solely from nervousness, but from a sense of clarity. Maybe Mark's reluctance wasn't a barrier, but rather a door opening to mutual resilience. "Look," she continued, her voice softer now. "Everyone has a story. What if we build a safe space where people feel empowered to unearth theirs? We could be catalysts for each other, reshaping our narratives as we embrace authenticity." A flicker of interest sparked in Mark's eyes, just a glimmer, but enough to tug at Alice's hope. "You really think this could change things?" he asked, betraying both his skepticism and curiosity. "I do," Alice replied, her conviction crystallizing. I already feel the change within me by standing here, speaking honestly with you. What if we can help others feel the same? Mark's shoulders loosening slightly sent a frisson of encouragement through her. The vulnerability they both feared laid the groundwork for a new phase in their lives. Perhaps the process would be painful, but Alice believed it could birth something beautiful. Mark nodded slowly. His previous defensiveness began to ebb. Maybe you're right. Sharing could be liberating. But it's going to require more than just workshops. We have to commit to the process, to dig deeper. The realization that Mark was contemplating genuinely, rather than resisting, invigorated her spirit. We can do this together, Alice ventured, stepping a little closer to him, feeling the space between them palpably narrowing. If we face it side by side, we stand a better chance of coming through intact. As their conversation shifted, Alice felt something vital begin to materialize between them, a shared mission, a sense of connection and understanding previously obscured by fear. However, just as newfound hope began to bloom, her phone vibrated again, pulling her attention away. The urgency in the notification cut through their fragile moment. It was from Jennifer, reminding Alice of the impending need to finalize their plans. "Mark, this might be our opportunity," she said, glancing back at him, now feeling the strange juxtaposition of excitement and anxiety. "We can set the wheels in motion, but it means committing first to understanding what lies ahead." Mark's hesitance returned, but Alice sensed the flame of determination igniting within him too. Would he choose to step in wholeheartedly, or would he retreat back to the safety of the shadows? They stood at a threshold, both poised to embark on a journey of vulnerability and growth. But which path would they choose to take? The uncharted domain ahead was one of stories and truths, and as their eyes locked once more, Alice felt an insatiable urge to push further. Would they dare to forge a new future together, or fall prey to the fears that had always held them captive? That uncertainty lingered in the air like a low, anxious hum as they took a collective breath. Alice's mind raced as she pulled herself away from the bubble of their conversation. The text from Jennifer a reminder of impending deadlines whirled in her thoughts, amplifying the urgency that already filled the room. Yet the moment she had shared with Mark hung in the air, a silent promise between them, one that resonated with the fervor of her convictions. "Can we pause for a moment?" she suggested, her voice steady despite the thrum of anxiety coiling in her stomach. Mark's eyes searched hers, and she could see the conflict swirling within him. "Sure. What's on your mind?" "I need to articulate why this matters to me," she said, narrowing her focus, absorbing the gravity of their shared venture. "It's not just about the workshops or helping others. It's about confronting my past and assuming responsibility for my own story. I can't keep burying the lessons I've had to learn." For the first time, Alice contemplated her narrative with clarity. There were stories of failure, doubt, and an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Each instance was a fracture in her identity, but also a stepping stone toward her growth. "Every misstep has shaped my understanding of authenticity, and I believe this journey could deepen that understanding for both of us." Mark leaned back, crossing his arms thoughtfully. "You're saying that by exposing ourselves, we grow stronger?" "Exactly. And it doesn't have to be pretty. It might just be cathartic." Feeling a wave of courage, Alice continued, "What if this isn't just an exercise but a chance to redefine our values? This vulnerability could ripple through our lives, not just personally, but professionally too. I want to create something meaningful with our stories, not just for us, but ultimately for others who struggle in silence." She felt a surge in her chest, igniting a fire she hadn't been aware of until right this moment. Could her experiences empower not just her, but perhaps cause change in someone else too? Mark's expression shifted. Something in her words seemed to resonate. "I've always been afraid that revisiting the past could drown me," he admitted quietly. "But maybe, just maybe, it's worth exploring. Then let us commit to doing this." Alice's voice held weight now, ashes of doubt turning into breath of possibility. "Let us start by sharing our stories, exploring the shadows together until we can find clarity. If we can lay down our fears together, think about what we could uncover." Mark began to nod gently, his earlier skepticism curving into a cautious optimism. But she could also sense the fears still lurking beneath the surface. "I want to pretend this won't be difficult for us," Alice added, her tone softening. "I may stumble, but you'll be there to catch me." and I'll promise to do the same for you. This isn't simply about storytelling. It's a reclamation of our agency. The sincerity of her words pulsed in the air between them, transforming the mounting tension into a fragile hope. Yet as they stood in this pivotal moment, Alice sensed the weight of their unresolved fears, a reminder of the shadows they had yet to confront. Just then, her phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. Distracted momentarily, Alice glanced at the screen, the text from Jennifer demanding immediate attention. "Sorry, it's work." She didn't want to lose this momentum, but felt the external world threatening to seep back in. "Go ahead," Mark replied, his voice a mix of support and hesitation. "I know this is important, but I don't want to let it slip away, Alice. I want to keep moving forward." Alice nodded, heart racing as she weighed the implications of the moment. Mark's willingness to move forward renewed her focus, yet she couldn't shut out the tightening knot of anxiety threatening to squeeze her resolve. "Promise me we won't lose sight of this," she said earnestly, looking into his eyes. "This journey, it matters to both of us." "I promise," he responded, the sincerity of his tone reassuring. "Let us take this step, together." As Alice typed a reply to Jennifer, a silent affirmation brewed within her. They stood on the brink of transformation, yet a looming question flickered in her mind. How much of themselves were they truly prepared to unveil? With the anticipation of what lay ahead, Alice initiated the reply, ready to dive into her responsibilities. Meanwhile, she couldn't shake the feeling that as much as their conversation was just beginning, deeper truths awaited precariously beneath the surface. And though resolution lay in the future, a spark ignited. Would they possess the courage to confront what surfaced, or clasp back onto the familiar comforts of their past? A wave of uncertainty washed over her, invigorating her spirit while leaving her yearning for more. Alice stood tall, her confidence radiating as she prepared for the workshop launch. Weeks had passed since her conversation with Mark, each day imbued with perseverance. Their mutual commitment to both their journeys bore fruit. She had crafted the outline for the event, a community platform where they would weave their stories into a collective tapestry of resilience. The invitation list shimmered with potential friends, neighbors, even some of Mark's colleagues. It would be a day of revelations and healing, a chance to embolden others to share their experiences. The transformative power of vulnerability had reshaped not only her life, but Mark's as well. He had stepped forward to participating in discussions, offering insights, and even expressing willingness to share his experiences, overcoming his skepticism. The moment they had reached together felt monumental, marking the transition from fear to empowerment. The morning of the event dawned bright, laughter and chatter buzzing as attendees filled the room. Alice took a moment to breathe deeply amid the vibrant energy. The warmth of the space enveloped her, thick with anticipation, yet her heart tingled with hope. She scanned the gathered faces, each marked by stories yet untold, and felt a swell of responsibility to illuminate their paths. "Welcome, everyone," Alice greeted, her voice steady as she captivated the audience's attention. She opened the floor for the first session, sharing snippets of her journey, the struggles with arthritis, evolving from self-doubt, and finding her voice in the cacophony of family obligations. Each word resonated, the audience captivated, reflecting their shared humanity. In that moment of vulnerability, she felt not only the weight of her past lift, but also the joy of mutual understanding sprout among them. When it came time for Mark to speak, Alice held her breath, a mix of anticipation and apprehension coursing through her. His presence on stage radiated a quiet strength. He shared his own journey with job loss, feelings of inadequacy, and the importance of connection. The room swallowed his words, the authenticity of his narrative forging an instant bond with the audience. Together, they painted a picture of resilience, underscoring the importance of community and healing. As they fielded questions and engaged in heartfelt dialogue, a palpable transformation threaded through the gathering like electricity. People began to share their stories, revealing vulnerabilities and triumphs alike. Each exchange created a web of connection, uniting them in purpose. By the end of the day, Alice felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The transformation she had envisioned springing forth had blossomed fully, evident in the warmth and camaraderie in the air. As attendees lingered, mingling and sharing thoughts, Alice and Mark exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement of their journey together. They didn't just forge their paths, but opened the door for others to do so as well. With their first workshop now a success, Alice had not only conquered personal challenges, but had also emerged as a voice of empowerment in her community. Deep satisfaction flooded her spirit as she embraced her evolving identity, a storyteller, a leader, and a woman unshackled from the burdens that once weighed her down. In the days that followed, Alice received messages praising the event's impact. People expressed their gratitude for enabling them to confront their own challenges, some contemplating their narratives, and others inspired to embark on their journeys of resilience. She realized that her own growth was no longer just a personal victory. It had become a beacon for those yearning for change. Alice Thompson stood at the forefront of her narrative, a woman who had turned shadows into strength and guilt into purpose. Her journey had become a roadmap, not only for herself, but for those around her, solidifying a profound evolution marked with empathy and courage. She had proven that personal fulfillment could thrive amid familial dedication. This was not the end, but the beginning of an exciting new chapter, one woven from shared experiences, collective healing, and a bright horizon ahead. If you haven't already, you need to subscribe now to witness more incredible journeys of transformation and discovery. This is the moment to show your support for personal growth stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the light. We want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and theories about Alice's journey and how it resonates with your own. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's inspire everyone to step into their own personal power.